The growing cracks in the relationship between Vice President Victoria Villarruel and the rest of Milei's government were on show again last week, this time over the fate of the ever-divisive Las Malvinas, or Falkland Islands. During the President's visit to the UN last week, Foreign Minister Diana Mondino took the opportunity to have a word with her UK opposite number, David Lammy. They spoke about issues surrounding the Falkland Islands, or Las Malvinas as they're known in Argentina. There was an agreement to cooperate over mineral extraction and fishing rights, and to resume the identification of fallen soldiers from the 1982 Falklands War. There would also be a restart of direct flights from Cordoba to the islands so that families of Argentine soldiers could visit the graves of their relatives. Veterans organisations and opposition politicians voiced their criticism, saying that the UK was using the humanitarian work as a bargaining chip in negotiations over fishing and mineral rights. Vice President Victoria Villarruel, whose father fought in the war, was incensed. She suggested that the Argentine government was capitulating to the UK and its continued occupation of Argentine sovereign territory for the sake of business negotiations, and that she felt that she had to speak out because any such cooperation with the colonial power was, quote, contrary to the interests of our nation. This is the latest in a number of disagreements between Villarruel and the rest of the government. On several occasions, she has annoyed President Milei by pushing forward pay rises for the Congress, and she's been absent at a number of official events where she was expected to accompany the president. And Villarruel, who is from a military family, is behind controversial moves to re-examine the accepted history of the 1976 to 1983 military government, claiming that figures are wildly exaggerated and that many convictions for crimes against humanity were politically motivated and should be overturned. The status of Las Malvinas is close to the hearts of most Argentines. The image of the outline of the islands can often be seen on wall murals, on car bumper stickers, and even on the sides of buses. Inevitably, the status of the islands is an issue that President Milei has had to deal with on a number of occasions. Whilst previous governments, notably and most recently that of Cristina Kirchner, have often used the dispute of the islands as a distraction from domestic problems, President Milei is less inclined to do so, for now. The president favours a diplomatic solution and a normalisation of relations between the two countries. Business is a much higher priority. The recent meeting of foreign ministers would seem to be in line with that approach. During his election campaign, Milei said that the islands were not a top priority and that the problems of the economy were much more urgently in need of attention. During his visit to speak at the World Economic Forum earlier this year, the president met with the then UK Foreign Minister David Cameron. While the Malvinas issue inevitably came up, the focus of the conversation was more to do with normal business relations. And during a BBC interview earlier in the year, Milei gave a carefully balanced perspective, saying that the British are there and it's a fact that must be accepted. The rights of the islanders should be respected, but that one day, possibly a long time in the future, negotiations would see the return of the islands to Argentine rule where they belong. To give a bit of context to viewers who aren't from either Argentina or the UK, Las Islas Malvinas, or the Falkland Islands as the British call them, are a small archipelago of islands about 400 kilometres off the coast of Argentina and some 13,000 kilometres from the UK. Living on the islands is a small community of around 3,000 British citizens who've been there for generations. Argentina claims that the islands were given to the country by the Spanish crown upon independence, and that the British stole the islands and continue to be an occupying force. In 1982, the ailing military government of Argentina launched an invasion of the islands to distract from domestic woes, which ultimately failed. The short war saw the deaths of almost 1,000 British and Argentine troops and civilians. The war precipitated the fall of Argentina's military junta and a return to democracy, while ensuring Margaret Thatcher won a huge victory at the British election the following year. It's worth noting that Milei has on many occasions proclaimed his admiration for Mrs. Thatcher and her economic policies. He calls her his idol and one of the greatest leaders in the history of humanity, and apparently keeps a collection of Thatcher-related memorabilia in his office. As you can imagine, that hasn't gone down well here. In 2013, a referendum among the Falkland Islanders voted 99.8% to remain British. As far as the British government is concerned, the issue is now closed, but it obviously remains an open wound to Argentine national pride. The whole topic of Las Malvinas is something that I try not to get into conversations about, particularly with family members. And around the anniversary of the war, April 2nd, I tend to keep my head down and my mouth shut. Thanks for watching. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please give it a like. And if you want to see more content like this, there's a couple of videos on the screen now. If you're not already subscribed, you might want to do that too. If you want to support the channel, you can buy me a coffee in the link below. And until next time, que tengas un buen día.